So as I said earlier, our topic today is finances and your health. So I wanted to discuss the topic of how finances will affect your health. We don't often hear these two topics put together, but I believe that this is a very important issue to address because it affects each one of our lives. And right now, there are a lot of people that have been put under financial stress because of this pandemic. In Philippians 4:6, it says, be careful for nothing. In other words, don't let fear come in, no matter what situation you're in. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made known unto God. That's some really good advice. The enemy will try to bring stress into your life, whether you are financially successful or you're suffering loss. You remember Paul talked about that. He said, it doesn't matter where I'm doing well or I'm not doing well. I've learned to be content in every circumstance. If you find yourself struggling financially, the enemy will try to project the lie that you're going to fail and that there is no hope for recovery of your finances. He will tell you that God is not big enough to intervene on your behalf. So that would be a lie, would it not? Conversely, when you've successfully built up your finances and your savings, the enemy will come and cause you to fear that you will lose it all. So it doesn't matter whether you're in plenty or you don't have much. The enemy is going to take whatever circumstance you're in, and he is going to bring about fearful thoughts about either situation. He will tell you that your finances and that what you saved up, it's not sustainable, it's not enough, and God's not going to preserve you. It's never going to be enough because you don't see God as your source. You see your bank account, you see other people, but you don't see God as your total source. You see, the money is not your source. God has to be your source. If you believe that, then you'll do well and you won't let fear come in. How does fear come in? How does financial stress come in? Well, the enemy is a spirit. We can't see him. He's just beyond our physical sight. And he can speak to our spirit, and God has created us with a theta brainwave that brings that thought over from your spirit into your soul, and you have a thought. You ever just been standing about and all of a sudden this thought pops in your head? Well, if it's an evil thought, if it's a fearful thought, it probably came from the enemy. So that's how he tempts us. And the scripture says that we are to cast those temptations down and lift up the way God thinks. So he will tell you that it's not sustainable. What you've saved up, that is, it's never going to be enough. People that have a lot of money, they always need a little more. If you ask them 1 year, how much money do you think you're going to need? And they might say $1 million. If you ask them the next year and they reach that goal, then they're going to say $2 million. So it's never going to be enough when you see money and what you have as your source. The enemy wants to steal your peace and your joy. According to a recent American Psychological Association survey, the most common source of stress today are the future of our nation's money and work. According to the APA, 77% of these people reported regularly experiencing physical symptoms caused by financial stress. 73% regularly experience psychological symptoms caused by stress. You know, we live in a culture that demands perfection. In the Western society, whether in the arena of finances, education, government, sports, business, or even the family, where there is a domineering, controlling parent, everything is judged by performance. We don't make allowances for people's failure because there's a stigma that everything we do must be perfect. There's a pecking order, and only the elite thrive in education, career, and income, while the rest of us are afraid that we will fall by the wayside. This state of affairs creates a lot of stress and anxiety in people's lives. You know, when they internalize this stress, it starts to affect our spirit and our soul and many of our body systems. The result, we may end up with a stress disorder. And we're going to look at some stress disorders today. So it's important that you realize that today's society may not make provision for failure. But I got good news for you. God does make provision for our failure because he knows that we aren't perfect and that we're going to do some things wrong. But we know Jesus paid for those problems. God says that a righteous man will fall and rise again. And we find that in Proverbs 24:16. For a just man falleth 7 times and rises up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. Also in Psalms 37:4, it says, though he fail, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. And Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians 2:10, for when I am weak, then Christ am I made strong.